And I will say that for me, this is the strongest, most intense, most loving, most enjoyable, least boring, most engaging, most fun, most adventurous that I've ever experienced in my life.
Welcome to Spotlight on Secure, a place where we have candid conversations with securely attached people about their relationships. A place where you can learn what secure attachment is like in a relationship and learn ideas for how to make your own relationships more secure, with more safety, trust, and commitment, yet still fun and passionate. I'm Kayli Larkin, a love and attachment coach, and I'm here today with Tatiana Rodriguez, an adjunct professor of public speaking, who brings her own secure relating style into the classroom with amazing communication strategies and resources for adjunct professors. But today we'll be talking about personal relationships, and Tatiana has graciously agreed to share her own journey of finding a secure relationship and the practices that she and her partner do to maintain a secure partnership. She has some wonderful tips we'll be highlighting for you about finding a secure relationship and how she was able to discern which relationships were right for her and why. You're going to learn a lot from this conversation today. Tatiana, thank you so much for agreeing to join me here. I'm super excited to have this conversation with you. I know we've been talking about this some on our own, and I have a lot of people in my audience who are interested in knowing what is it like to have a secure relationship and what does a secure person even look like? One of the things that people struggle with is when they're working with attachment style is they wonder, like, where are all of the secure people? And this might seem a little odd to you coming from this perspective, but for a lot of people, they don't really know a lot of secure people. They don't really know what it might look like to have a secure relationship. And so that's what prompted these interviews, is just kind of to shine the spotlight on secure relationships and talk a little bit more about what that could be like for our audience. So I'm so excited to have Tatiana Rodriguez on today. She is an adjunct professor at Rutgers University, and she helps other adjunct professors to create dynamic classes that students will remember. She uses a lot of really great communication strategies in her teaching, and her early experience has really shaped how she got into communication. And we'll let Tatiana tell us a little bit more about that. So Tatiana, can you fill me in on what brought you to getting into this place where you are today of helping people to have experiences in classrooms that are warm and engaging and fun?
Absolutely, Kayli. And yes, it's a pleasure. First of all, it feels like such a big deal and such an honor to be in a place where I can even call myself secure, right? Because it was not always the case. So it's really powerful to be able to talk about it from this perspective. It almost feels like, I'm the rapper that made it, that I am here in this great place that where I always wanted to be and I knew was possible in a relationship. But so I am just excited that I'm even in that category. So just wanted to share a little bit about that. But you touched on how my early years, right, the origin stories definitely shaped the way that I teach in communication topics. And that's 100% correct. I mean, I have a family that loves each other very much, but communication was very unhealthy. And my parents were married for a very long time, but are divorced. And thankfully, I'm very thankful about this, are also friends. But watching relationships growing up, I had an understanding about love and security, but I still was very insecure in myself, but not in all areas. So, for example, I felt very secure that I'm an intelligent person. I felt very secure that I'm a good person. But when it came to relationships, in terms of thinking like, I feel comfortable, I feel grounded, I feel solid in this relationship, that really wasn't the case early on. And here's the truth. I think the issue is I would ask myself, like, am I really enough? Like, am I blank enough? Good enough, attractive enough, desirable enough for a marriage to work long term? So those are some of the questions and things that played on early on. And I did get married fairly young. It was not what I expected. I thought I would actually be married a little bit older, but I did get married at 24. And I was married for 6 years, and that relationship ended, right? So, been divorced for a very long time. I'm 46 now, was divorced at 30. And then after that, made a series of poor choices in relationships. And I think that's probably very common. People going through a divorce, not known to make really great choices immediately after. And then I just realized, okay, I have to stop this. I'm choosing people that I know are not right for me long term. So I think it was trying to find a short term solution to a long term problem. And I really wanted to be able to figure out, why am I making the choices that I'm making? So I did that through counseling, through my spiritual beliefs too, and just thinking, I got to get myself together here, and really figuring out and believing that there has to be a better way. There really has to be a better way. And there is, which is the good
Yeah.
news.
And I think a lot of our viewers will find this inspiring because a lot of people struggle with what you say that you have struggled with in the past, which is kind of like this feeling of worthiness or this feeling of being enough. That's a message that a lot of people can relate to or have struggled with themselves. And you say that maybe that somehow drew you into a relationship where it didn't work out as well as you wanted. Can you kind of tell us a little bit more about how that played out? Kind of a nutshell version. We don't have to go deep into,
Sure. No, I'm happy to share, because I know that, being honest about it is what really will resonate with people, because it's the truth. And also, I've done a lot of healing from it too. So it is something that I'm very comfortable to talk about openly. And I will share that we were both good people that entered into this relationship with earnest feelings and love for each other. But I think something I didn't understand when I was younger is that I mistakenly believed that all you needed were two things. You need to love each other. And because of my faith as well, like, we need to have that shared faith and those beliefs in God. So I thought, if we have those two things, everything else will work out. But while that to me is a fantastic start, it's simply not enough for a lasting relationship. And so I think I didn't know myself well enough and how I relate to different people in relationships, meaning I didn't understand enough. I had no idea about attachment styles. I didn't at the time understand about love languages. I didn't at the time understand about different needs and compatibility, introversion and extroversion, because we were complete opposites when it came to our personality. And
right.
I thought, well, at least if you have enough in common, but we we did not have enough in common. So at the end of the day, we were extremely incompatible people.
Right. So
And
what was it about that relationship that like at the heart of it didn't work? Because a lot of the people that I work with, they're struggling with relationships where there's certain dynamics or there's certain patterns or there's reasons why they don't work, right? We can say like there's compatibility, but then it goes into these deeper kinds of attachment reasons. And we've talked some about attachment styles. So from that perspective, was he not available or was I not available? Or can you share a little bit more about that?
absolutely. And there were a number of things. It's never any one thing, right? But rather many things over time. And so, for example, even just understanding that I'm an extroverted person and he's an introverted person.
Yeah.
And so for him, social things was no all the time. And I started saying no also, which was making me very unhappy.
Yeah.
So it felt like, and of course, I just want to say to everybody that I'm biased. Obviously, you bring my previous spouse into the story, and he has his version too, and his feelings, and I was certainly not a perfect partner either, right? I made a lot of mistakes, but I think one of the differences between us is that I was willing to acknowledge those mistakes and work on them for the betterment of the relationship. And I didn't see that same action from from him. So there was the incompatibility just about energy levels. And now of course I understand those things. And I have friends who are introverted and we make it work. But I realized one of the big lessons for me is that a partner who is extroverted is more suited for me and my needs, right? Not that that has to be a requirement, but just understanding energy levels was part of it. Also understanding that while I believed that he loved me, he wasn't expressing love in a way that meant love to me. And
Yeah.
so that made it difficult as well. And then another part is that if we were to think about our lives in the future, we had different things that we wanted, which I didn't realize that at first. I'm very open to new experiences, so I wanted to experience things in life together.
Yeah.
But he preferred to experience a lot of things alone. And even very healthy, very fit person, he was, and I wanted that to inspire and motivate me, but he just preferred to do his workouts alone. So, I respect that.
Mhm.
But there was so many things that's like, well, I wanted to try a new food. But then that wasn't something he wanted to try, so I had to try it with another person or friends or on my own. So there was just a lot of things like that where the incompatibility really started to show, especially the further along the relationship got. So I would want to come meet him where he's at, but I didn't feel like he was willing to meet me. And I can honestly say that I was communicating. There's no way that person could ever say that I didn't share my feelings, that I wasn't open and honest, because I was, and I feel very good that I was able to do that.
Yeah.
But in the beginning, I can tell you that I was very insecure. Like I didn't live in fear that I was going to be cheated on or anything. I felt like I needed to be needed to be worthy, and for to have that long-term commitment in a relationship, which I now know is, of course, a very unhealthy approach. Needing to be needed is about, where am I getting my sense of worthiness from? Where does that come from? And validation as well. So I was seeking it out from this person, and I was not possessive, but I did feel jealousy, and that's how I knew that I was insecure. And I'll give you one example that I'm like embarrassed to say this, but this is just the truth. This is what happened. I was young, but this is what was playing out in my mind. And this is why I say that I had insecurities. We were watching a movie that I loved with Sandra Bullock, who's a
Mhm.
great performer. The movie's great. And he made a comment in the movie about her physical appearance. And I don't remember, what kind of compliment, like maybe that she looked beautiful. It could be something like that. So what was going on in my brain is, if he thinks she's beautiful and I look nothing like her, then I'm not beautiful to him. Like, and again, I'm just being honest about what's going on in my brain. I'm not saying
Yeah.
it's right. I'm not saying
Yeah.
it's good. It's just what was real. So
Sure.
my mind would do that, and I realized, I'm like, I need to figure this out. Why is it that a compliment to an actress on a screen, and it wasn't one of those things where it's like inappropriate, it was a compliment, is making me feel like I'm not good enough, or
Right.
I'm turning it around. And so, and again, I do believe that we had a relationship where he was faithful. That was never an issue, or something that I thought was going to happen. And I'm sure that comes up in relationships, but just wanted to make mention that that was not an issue in that first marriage. But these were the crazy things going on in my brain, and I could tell. I'm like, where does jealousy come from? And I had to start looking into it. And again, it was not possessiveness, because I wanted him to have his own friends and experiences. But another area where we would have difficulty would be, I was sharing, like, he was more an introverted person, and so going out wasn't a big thing.
Yeah.
But then we would make plans for a big family commitment of some kind, and he would not show up on time to the family commitment because he was delayed with friends. And I had a really hard time with that. Like, we made an agreement and the expectations were there. And so breaking that agreement to me was very difficult. And when that happened and happened and happened, it started to tear away at the relationship too, and at the trust, and that sense of commitment to it felt shaky.
Yeah, for sure. And it's interesting listening to you kind of describe the the dynamics of this relationship because it seems like so a lot of people have this idea that like for secure folks, like everything relationships just come super easily. and you were, finding your way. And we'll talk about how your current relationship is so much easier and different than that one was in the moment for our listeners. But it does seem that there was this dual kind of awareness on your part of, yeah, things were hard and the dynamic was hard, and there were things that he was doing that were, challenging. And then you were also very aware, and you're very aware now of, like, what is it in myself that I notice in that relationship? And you have very clear vision around that, noticing, like, it's not that I was possessive, but you also noticed there were things that I could see in myself that I was bringing into this dynamic. And one of the things that is very important for secure relationships is, as you know, is couples meeting each other on the same page, like doing things together, prioritizing each other. And some of the things that you're saying, it just sounds like maybe you didn't feel prioritized in that relationship, like when you were going to do family events together and then he was late because he was hanging out with his friends. That kind of behavior, you said it very kindly, but like, I've had people bring situations like that into our coaching, and it can be very frustrating for people. And I imagine that was very frustrating for you
It
when that
was.
happened.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Especially because that wasn't the case most of the time. So it made it
sure.
extra frustrating that's like when we have a family commitment. So
Yeah,
another thing I realized in counseling too is that it almost became like instead of us being equal partners, we were in this role of parent and child. And I knew that that was not good.
yeah,
So once it felt like, why do I feel like I'm talking to a teenager who doesn't want to attend family gatherings because they'd
right,
rather be hanging out with their friends? I'm like,
right.
what's going on here? And it felt, but then again, if you remember, I said that I needed to be needed. So there was some kind of a gratification, a twisted sense of worthiness that I was getting from being needed. And
Yeah,
and I had to get on more solid ground about that. And I learned so much, but after a divorce, and I don't know statistically how common this is, but I imagine it's very common. If you find a person who has the qualities that you were lacking in the marriage, very often after a divorce, you hang on tight to that new person, but you're blind to all the other things because they have those core things that were missing in the relationship. So you cling to that. And that happened to me as well. I met somebody, and this other person had all of the things that was missing for me in that relationship on the surface. It seemed
yeah,
like it. And the best way that I could describe that relationship, it almost felt like a Tasmanian devil situation where everything was like super fast, super elevated, and the jump, that leap was so high and it
mhm.
felt good, but then it came crashing down very, very quickly too.
Yeah,
And it took me a little bit to decide to let go of that relationship, but it was unhealthy, but also in a way I felt like I had been fooled. Like this person presented a very different version of themselves to me, but really that's not who they were. And I had not had that experience before.
yeah,
So with that person, it was a huge lesson as well. But then I was also a lot stronger, and I again, it took me a little bit, but I made the realization like, no way. This is not going to work for me. But it took a lot of pain, a lot of tears, a lot of recognizing that this is not right. This is not the signs of a healthy relationship, and also that I was moving too fast. Like I
yeah. And
was not allowing the evidence to come forth. So that was another big takeaway for me too. It was like, let the evidence show first before you make a decision about this person's character or anything.
yes, and that's such a good point, to let the evidence speak for itself, because a lot of people I know are going to relate to what you're saying around getting into a relationship that isn't right, where there's a lot of those that high intensity emotion, ups and downs. It feels really great, and then it's not feeling really great. That's something that happens a lot for people. And so the fact that you were able to get yourself out of that situation, to recognize that, hey, this isn't healthy, speaks volumes. And a lot of people struggle with that, because can you kind of share how you were able to do that, or what made that possible for you to get yourself out of that relationship that wasn't healthy.
I think part of it was that you instinctively know pain is not a great sign of healthiness, right?
Right.
Even in your body. A
Yeah.
lot of people will say to you in exercise places I've had it said to me like you got to push through the pain, no gain. But I have a different approach. And even with my own body, I've learned I have to actually know if I feel pain, it means stop doing it this way. Something's not working here. Figure out a different way. So I took that same mentality into my relationships in that if I'm feeling pain that's inflicted by another person's actions, is it an internal issue, right? Is it touching on something from my past that I need to work on, or is it the kind of pain that I need to say, no, 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 I don't want this. And after a while in the relationship, but again, this was like the highs were very high and the lows were very low. After two of those lows, because the relationship ended and then restarted, then ended again. And after that, I remember saying, because this person wanted to come back, and I just remember being shocked. How could this person ever think that this would happen again? So I remember my exact words were, in what world, on what planet did you ever think it would be a good idea for us to get together?
And I just
To
want to
me,
pause right there because that is such an important statement to ask oneself when one is in a really unhealthy dynamic like this. And a lot of people struggle with getting out of that. And the fact that you were able to, I think, speaks volumes for the amount of security that you had in yourself to be able to shift out of that because there's a lot of really intense hormonal things that happen with people, with oxytocin and connection. And
absolutely.
it could be a kind of love addiction. And so it's hard to get out of that. And for you to be able to get yourself out of that when he came back and wanted to have a relationship again, for you to say, like, on what world would this be, possible? Like, why would you think this would be possible? I think that speaks volumes for the secure that you have in you.
That was building, and it really was admitting to myself that I was making some poor choices. I also rekindled a relationship from when I was younger. Again, and this person was a good person too, but again, we were so highly incompatible. But I knew that. That to me was a decision. I didn't want to be lonely.
Yeah.
And I knew that we had a strong history together and that we would have a nice time together. And again, that I wasn't going to be torn apart, right? Like, there was still a sense of safety with this person because he was a good person. But I knew this was, we don't have what it takes. And I was looking for a long-term relationship,
Yeah.
not temporary, but I chose temporary. And again, I had to remind myself every time I say yes to something or someone, I'm saying no to something else. And I just realized if I'm saying yes to the people I know are not right for me, that doesn't allow space, time for the person that is right for me. All right, so I mentioned about two relationships. Then there was one more immediately following the divorce and in those few years after the divorce. And I knew that I was getting stronger myself internally. And even in my wisdom was growing. My decision making was getting better because this third relationship I approached with caution in the sense of, oh, nice person, also divorced. I did have some frame of reference for his family, which somehow is always feels a little bit safe when it's like, oh, I know some of the people in his family. But I didn't get, I was questioning whether or not he was over his first marriage, who had been unfaithful to him. And, this was his first love. And so I'm going into this with eyes wide open saying, okay, let's wait and see. Let's see if he's ready. I mean, it had been enough time where I felt like a person could be ready, right? It had already been multiple years since the relationship had ended. But again, here I am. I'm like, I need to see the signs. I need to see the evidence. And he was gentle. He was kind. He was sweet. But it became very evident that he was not yet over his ex. And so I made the decision to let that relationship go, wishing him the best, but citing that very same thing to him, it just always felt like that person's presence was in the relationship, and I knew that that is not what I wanted at all. So again, like in increments, I could see, okay, I'm getting stronger, I'm getting more secure, I'm becoming wiser, I'm making better choices. And then guess what happened after that?
What happened?
I was alone for over a decade.
Yeah.
So I spent the longest 10 years of my life, 10 years alone in terms of romantic relationships. Thankfully, I had a lot of rich friendships and family relationships, but I didn't have that. And while I was never the kind of person growing up who was always in a relationship, there were many, many huge gaps of time where I was completely alone. I never wanted to be alone for that long.
Yeah.
I don't know why that was the way, but that just was what happened. And I feel like it's not because I wasn't open to it. I felt that I was open, but it just wasn't happening. And, and in my prayer life, I'd be like, why? Why do I have to be alone for so long? Like, it is a desire of my heart and I want to be with somebody.
Sure.
And my friends were all like, well, you need to get out there. And I was like, what does that mean? What does it mean to get out there? And even my brothers would say, like, you've got to do online dating. And I was resistant to it, but I tried. And there were, just like everybody else, many ups and downs. No one app can guarantee you anything. But I did end up meeting someone through online dating. And this one showed a lot more promise, even early on.
Yeah. Okay. And is that your current partner that you're with now, or? Yeah,
Yes.
it
So
is. So you
now
met.
we're up into the present. Right. So that was like a few minutes version of the past 16 years.
Yeah. And I just want to say that people have this idea that everyone is like one attachment style. And I talk about in my content how we're all a blend, right? And we also can grow and attachment styles can change. And just in your journey, Tatiana, we're seeing like this shift as you're heading more and more towards secure in yourself and in your relationships. And the other thing is, you mentioned you were in a period of being single for about a decade. And something that happens for people sometimes when they are really afraid of being alone is they jump fast into a relationship, or they jump into a relationship and then they stay there because they're not comfortable in themselves enough to be alone, and it's kind of scary and it doesn't feel good. And so they'll stay in relationships too long, they'll stay in relationships that aren't healthy, and it can just cause all kinds of problems for them relationally and in their own lives. And so just what you're sharing about, you got into relationships where you kind of realized like, hey, this isn't really working. And you just it I mean, I'm sure that it wasn't easy. I'm sure that it wasn't effortless. But the way that you're sharing around how you transitioned out of them and you realized that they weren't working for you, that is actually a hallmark of secure, where people can transition out of relationships, recognize in themselves, like, this isn't working, this isn't healthy, and they're able to leave. They're able to pull themselves out of it. They're able to make room for something better. That is a hallmark of secure attachment. And so that's just something I want to highlight for our listeners, is that being able to kind of recognize where you're at in a relationship, it's a good thing to do, to be able to know how to do that for
Absolutely.
yourself, to stay true to yourself, stay true to what's important to you, stay true to what you really value and want in a partnership. And touch on it, you
It's
were
like
going to share this. Yeah.
it's like that commercial, because you're worth it. You have to keep that in mind. And the pain of the, I don't know, wrong relationship, mismatched relationship, unhealthy is a good word. The pain of the unhealthy relationships, I was like, I don't want this anymore. I don't want that. It's too much for me. It's too painful. It's like it takes a toll on my mind and my spiritually. I'm like, this is just not right for me. And I had to shift my mindset and wait for the evidence. Really, truly, it was about, does this person truly show me? And you can only know in time, right? You have to give yourself time to see that proof and that evidence is there. And if it's not, then then that's something that you need to let go. Because I just kept thinking, I kept telling myself, I don't want history to repeat itself. I know the statistics on marriages where first marriages about 50% end in divorce in the United States. And believe it or not, second and third marriages, it goes even higher. It's 70 something percent for a third and 60 something percent for second marriages ending in divorce. And
Wow.
you would think people would learn their lessons, but I'm like, I don't want to be that. I don't want to end up in this situation anymore. And I want to be smarter about making good choices.
Sure.
And and I feel like I did. I feel like this time I made a very good choice.
Yeah. Yeah. And so tell us more about that. Tell us more about your relationship with your current partner, who I understand is fabulous, and I've met him, and he's it seems like the two of you are a very good fit for each other. And yeah, can you tell us more about what that's like now?
Absolutely. There was early on, there was first of all, there was respect. So in online dating, the messaging was appropriate, it was respectful, it was kind, and it was playful too. And it was starting out with things where I felt like we were compatible. Our So we would have conversations about family time, about having people over for dinner or going out with people for dinner, how much time you like to spend with your partner alone versus with others, like all of these compatibility questions that are going off in my mind. And it's not that I was sitting there with an actual checklist, but I was going through personality things in my mind, saying like, hey, are we well suited for these kinds of things? And the answer was yes. It did feel like this was a strong possibility, and the evidence was always there. And I remember this funny thing that my previous roommate said to me. Online dating is a numbers game, and you have to date a lot of people to get to one, which I understand, but it felt like such a job, such a hard task to do the online dating. That in and of itself could be a multiple hour conversation, just the
Sure.
experiences of online dating.
Yes.
So I'm
Yes.
sure if anybody else is online dating, they can relate to that. But
Yes.
in the end, she said to me, listen, if a guy is going to ask you out and they offer you a Saturday night, you know that you're priority to them. If they ask you for a Sunday, if they ask you for a Friday, they're probably dating somebody else on Saturdays. But if they ask you for a Sunday, then you're probably third in line. And if they offer you weekday dates, forget it. Don't even say yes. So I remember with my current partner, and the way I did it was I wanted to do a video chat first because I wanted to make sure this person was who they say they are and that we can have nice communication. And we did it all through the app, so it's not like giving out your phone number or anything yet. But we had a great video, 1 hour chat conversation. We're both smiling from ear to ear the whole time. So that was in and of itself a great sign because I had had so many video chats with people who it just wasn't there. It felt forced, it felt awkward, but this felt pretty great and pretty easy.
Yeah.
And I noticed that not that it was effortless because I was putting in a lot of effort and so was he, but that it was smooth rather than so bumpy to deal with. And he said, oh, I had a really nice time talking with you in the video chat. I would love to ask you to have dinner. And and I said, oh, when would be good for you? And of course, I'm replaying my roommate's advice. And he's like, Saturday, Friday, Sunday, any day you want. You pick a day, and I will be there. So that was another key sign that he was really willing to accommodate me.
Yes, he was prioritizing getting to know you. That's so important rather than just thinking like, oh, well, whenever it's convenient for me. And that is a very important thing to look for in a partner is that they're interested, they're prioritizing you, they're not playing games, they're not pretending that they're less available than they really are or the other way around, that they're just excited and open and honest about their interest in getting to know you. So that was one way that you knew your partner was right for you was just his availability, his presence, and it was fun, it was engaging. So you're in this relationship now, and how do you how is it on a day-to-day basis? Like what helps you know that this is the right relationship for you to be in? Like what are the little things that you do that tell you that, or the little things that happen that tell you that this is the right relationship?
So many things, but one of the top things that reminds me or confirms for me that this is a good relationship is that I always feel like we have each other's backs. Meaning, even if it's a bad day or even if it's a disagreement or an argument, we're still ultimately there for each other. And everybody who's a human being who's been in a relationship knows those feelings of frustration and anger after a discussion and things escalate. But what I noticed is that no matter what has happened, we're always willing to talk about it. There's
Yeah.
always a moment where either I say or he will say, can we talk about what happened? And I know early on I said, trying to find somebody who's got a lot of common ground with me and compatibility, but we are very different people still. Our core values are the same and we're both extroverted. That is a match, but we express ourselves very differently. We communicate differently. Brene Brown talks about this concept of trust, and she uses an acronym VAULT, VAULT. And then one of the components of that is giving each other the benefit of the doubt that even if something bad happened or you feel hurt or you feel pain, like giving your partner the benefit of the doubt that they did not mean to hurt you intentionally. And I feel that between us. Like I know, yes, we're both going to mess up. I know I'm going to mess up too. But at the end of the day, we know that neither one of us means to cause each other harm, and we're willing to admit it when we do, and we're willing to apologize, and we're willing to work on it to make it better and not let the same thing keep happening. So I see so much of that evidence in our relationship because, yes, of course, things have gone wrong, but
Yeah.
it's always followed up with, and it doesn't take very long either, is another thing I noticed to say, I'm sorry, I don't know where that came from. I didn't mean to be, and I'm saying like me too. I'm sorry, I did not mean to be snarky. It's just, I guess it's coming from my stress with this other thing
Yeah.
and being and the emotional intelligence that comes with it too, to be able to know. Here's a question I always ask myself if I'm not sure what's happening: is what's really going on here? Because it's like, this can't be about this. Like, what's really at the heart of the issue? Like, oh, that's what's really bothering me. And then I can verbalize that part. So the communication between us is strong and we're willing to talk things out. And we are both there are people who speak to think and then people who think to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And he for sure is a person who speaks and sometimes without really processing or thinking fully. I am a little more of a blend, really, and I've learned in my own life to think first before I say something, just in case.
Sure.
So we do have differences when it comes to that, but just even understanding those differences and knowing it. For example, my partner has some attentional things, and so I had to learn about that. It's a consideration I have to make when we're speaking and processing. His way of processing information is different, and so but even just being able to share and talk about those things is important for the growth of the relationship and being able to be fully honest about that. Now, one thing I am getting better at that I am not so great at is, like, I can be pretty serious about serious matters, right? Like, I know one of the things for me is I can take myself a little bit too seriously and I need to have a little more fun sometimes. And he will more readily be able to joke about something. And sometimes I'm ready for the joke, sometimes I'm not, but ultimately I know that is a great way to be able to move on from it too, is to be able to joke with each other and poke a little bit of fun about certain tendencies or ways that we have. That's not mean. It's just meant to be light and add a little bit of levity and be able to know that we're past the situation now, that we can joke about it.
Sure. And so you've highlighted a couple of really important things here, Tatiana. And one of them is the power of playfulness. So in secure relationships, just being able to have that kind of like sense of play and fun and laugh and joke, right? And another thing that is important is the power of repair and
Mm.
attunement and being able to apologize, when we've done something wrong. I know in my own relationship, which is secure functioning, like we're both able to apologize fairly easily if something, there's a misattunement or something like that. And that is one of the things that allows us to just move forward, and we go back to building all those positive interactions that make up for that little blip. You want a high
Absolutely.
ratio of, yeah, you want a high ratio of those, the feel good stuff, so that all those little misattunements, they don't have as much power, right? Because we're always going to make mistakes. We're always going to have things happen. It's just part of being human. And we really want to be able to build that layer of safety and security that we know we can come back to. And the fact that you know your partner really well, you know that there's some attentional things, some ways that he processes differently. That's part of knowing your partner. It's like we have the handbook for them, and you know what he needs, you know who he is, so that you're able to meet him where he's at. So I'm wondering, as far as just building and maintaining trust in your relationship, like how do you bring trust in? How do you maintain that sense of trust in your relationship?
One of the fastest ways that I saw trust between the two of us is that we both can have access to each other's cell phones anytime, 24/7.
Mhm.
That was made clear from both of our ends. I said to him, "It's like, unless I'm trying to plan like a surprise for your birthday or something, that's really the only time wouldn't want you to see something." But,
Right.
and I just jokingly, but I I saw that it just really helped me be very relaxed in the relationship. And the
Yeah.
other thing is being willing to talk openly about our past experiences and our past relationships without spewing nastiness about the other person, but speaking about that person. You're still being honest, especially if there was very painful dynamics in that relationship, or some people experience relationships with narcissists.
Yes.
And so being able to talk openly about the pains and the hurts, but also seeing, this was another indicator for us, this person went to counseling already. This person, my partner currently when we met, had already done the hard work for maybe a year or two in helping himself get to a place to feel really good by himself. And I think that's a key factor too, is you come to a place where you feel good alone. It may not be what you want. We often have a desire to have that partnership, but you feel good alone. You like who you are. You have a life that's rich and fulfilled. But then together, there's something created
Right.
together.
That's where
But
the magic happens. Yeah. And there's magic in being alone. And I think that's what you're saying, right? Is that we have the magic in ourselves. And when we come together with the other person, there's magic, but we're not depending on someone else to make us complete. We're not depending on them to bring out our gifts. Or they may do that. That's amazing. But we also can access those ourselves. Yeah.
absolutely. What
Yeah.
100%. We have access to ourselves, and it's this thing, like, if for any reason I had to be alone again, like, I could cry just thinking about that. I would not want that.
Yeah.
But I feel secure enough in myself to know I would be okay if I had to get through that, even though I would be sad. But I would, and I think that's just a healthy way to approach life. Like,
Yeah.
it would hurt, it would be painful, you would still go through a terrible loss, but you have other things to live for too. You have other people and other things to work on. So I know that strength is there, even though 100% I would never want that.
Sure,
So
yeah, that never happens. But yeah, realistically, that it's good to know that you're strong, that you would be able to get through it. That right, for sure.
and
Yeah.
another key factor that shows me the power and the strength of a secure relationship is the teamwork.
Yes.
In my past relationships, because I'm a demonstrative person, and my affection is verbalized and expressed. It's just the way that I am. But I didn't previously wait for the evidence to come in from that other person. Whereas in this relationship, it really feels like a team. If I'm planning something, for example, the other day we volunteered to run a kids group in our church. And and I volunteered, but he was willing to do it with me. And together it just creates an even better experience. If he signs up to do something, I will help him too. So it's and it being in the kitchen, there's like the chef and then there's the sous chef,
Yeah.
and we're willing to be each other's sous chefs depending on what we've got going on or a person's strengths or talents. If
Yeah.
he needs help organizing files and folders with technology, I'm more than happy to do that because that's not a strength for him, but it is a strength for me. So it just and the other part, I think I contrasted this with my first marriage, is like the absence of his presence in big family moments.
Mhm.
Whereas it's completely different in my current relationship too. Like he wants to be there and is there and prioritizes those commitments in his schedule too.
Yes.
So if we schedule something, it's in his calendar, it's shared, and and he's there. Like his presence, and I can count on it. I can count on it. And the way that I felt early on with him is just I just was breathing so easily all the time. There was such an ease about it that felt so good. And I have to say, and we started a relationship in my mid 40s, This is not like a very long time ago. And to me, once I entered in this relationship, I knew this is what a healthy relationship is. This is what a healthy relationship feels like. This is what it
Yeah.
tastes like. Everything, every sense involved. Like, this is a healthy, loving relationship.
I love that, Tatiana. And I do a lot of work with people somatically where they tap into that felt sense. So can you tell people how it felt for you in your body? How does it feel to feel that this relationship is right for you? You said that there's a sense of being able to breathe easier. Is there anything else that you notice for yourself?
Yeah. So as I think about it right now, you often think like you approach relationships like this with tense shoulders in your mind, like
Yeah.
I'm gonna try, but I'm not sure. And that's always true in the beginning. But then again, you see the evidence, and like my shoulders are relaxed. I'm relaxed.
Yeah.
The other piece is that I I feel maybe accepted is the right word, but it's more than just accepted. Because I think there's different levels. Like we tolerate certain things, we accept certain things, we like, we love, and we fully embrace. I feel like no matter what I look like, no matter what I'm wearing, no matter what my hairstyle is, or makeup, or sickness, like no matter anything, it's like he sees me at the highest level and not on a pedestal level, because I have had a relationship where a person would put me on a pedestal and it makes it feel like I'm not real. But here it's like I feel fully embraced, flaws, everything is just like he sees me, he loves me for every part of me. And so that makes it so easy to be around. And I'm sure people have had girlfriends who, like, it doesn't matter if they come over and your hair is a wreck, or you haven't showered yet that day. Like, none of that stuff matters. And that's how I feel in the relationship as well, that no matter what, I know that the way that he sees me is loving. And I'm like, wow, I did
Yeah.
not expect to get choked up thinking about it, but it,
Yeah.
it
It's beautiful.
feels it feels beautiful.
It's beautiful. And it's a big difference than, being sort of compared to Sandra Bullock, is just kind of knowing that in yourself, you can just have a bad hair day or not even wash your hair, and he still loves you for who you are and still thinks you're beautiful. Like it's very
Right.
powerful to have that sort of acceptance from a partner that even though,
Absolutely.
you're not like shining like all dressed up like you might be going out to dinner or like looking out to the world, like you can just relax and be yourself and be comfortable. Now, one thing that people wonder who they're in relationships that they have the highs and lows, they're dramatic. Sometimes people get stuck in what's called the anxious avoidant trap. And some people have the impression that a secure relationship, sure, it sounds good, but it might be boring. So I just wonder what you could say to that, because there's people who think like oh, sure, I could have a partner who's really loving and accepts me for who I am and doesn't care if my hair is a mess. But like, how is the sex going to be? Like, is it going to be passionate? Am I going to actually like feel excited about being with them, or am I just going to be bored? So I wonder if you could speak to that a little bit about your experience around the passion or excitement in your relationship.
Sure. And I can see why people would have that concern. I think that I probably had said to myself in those the lonely years, the years where I was alone, like, okay, if I find someone who's stable and trusting, but then like, am I not gonna have a good time? But I was I was also in a marriage where I felt bored a lot because I so open to new experiences and trying new things, and I wasn't getting that. But what I found in my relationship with my partner is that having that trust and that freedom and that openness makes everything more vivid, more enjoyable. And I will say that for me, this is the strongest, most intense, most loving, most enjoyable, least boring, most engaging, most fun, most adventurous that I've ever experienced in my life. And I mean like taking trips to Acadia National Park, all the way from cooking in the kitchen together, coming up with a new recipe, to our physical intimacy, to all of those things. There's nothing that has ever compared to what I currently have in this secure relationship. So to me, it is it's fireworks, it's love, it's but the difference, like I shared that one relationship that the highs were so high
Yeah.
and then the lows were so low. It
Yeah.
doesn't feel like a roller coaster. It does, which is scary to me. Somebody might like roller coasters, so that may not be a good analogy, but to me, those are scary and
Yeah.
like I get sick and nauseous.
Yeah.
So it
Fireworks are
doesn't
great, but they
feel,
also could fireworks are great, but they could also set the house on fire. Yeah.
yes. So
Yeah.
to me, it's not that feeling.
Yeah.
It's it's safe, but it is not dull.
Yeah.
It's just like, I don't know, like sunlight almost, but it's
Yeah.
like you enjoy it, you need it, you love it, and it truly is, honestly, Kaylee, the best experience, the best relationship that I've ever had, and I feel so thankful. And I will
God.
also say that it was worth the wait to me too. Like looking back, those years were very hard, but I'm so happy that I did not compromise, even when people were telling me like maybe you're just a little too picky. But at the same time, connection has to be there. And when it finally when we finally came into each other's lives, like I was ready, he was ready, and we'd both done the work on ourselves. And that's maybe one other piece that was important to me, is knowing that he was already open to counseling and willing to talk about things like that, because I just think it's so important for everybody, versus a person who was very resistant to it. To me,
Yeah.
the fact that we're just open about our growth as people too really 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 makes a difference. But yeah, it's a
Absolutely.
super exciting relationship.
Sweet. And I'm so excited to hear you say that. And it is my experience also being in a secure functioning relationship that we have amazing adventures together, and it's like playful and fun and it's exciting and it's not boring. And I think that when I was going through my own journey of, insecure relationships, that was a fear of mine. And I just couldn't quite get interested in someone who was going to be like that kind of stable, consistent love that is so good for the attachment system. And so I think it's a powerful message for people to hear that these relationships, these secure relationships, can also be exciting and passionate and fun.
100% living
Yeah.
proof, right?
Yes. Yes. Well, Tatiana, I would love to continue this conversation because I still have more questions.
Sure, be
Yeah.
happy to.
Okay. Awesome.
That
Yeah.
was a really nice moment too, to the way you asked me to like how does it feel, that really got me like feeling the emotions of it.
Yeah. I probably could have gone into that a little bit more, but actually, I'll put that in here so it'll be on the recording really
Hmm.
quick. So yeah, being able to feel in your body what feels right as far as if you're dating and you're meeting people. Sometimes people get a sense right away, like they can feel something in their body
maybe it's flutteriness or butterflies. And it's totally normal to be excited and have butterflies in our stomach when we're on the first date. But if we get like a sense of almost like danger in our body, like hair standing on end or anything like that, that is not a good that is not a good indicator that that's someone we want to be in a long-term relationship with. We have like danger cues in our own body. Now, it could also be there's work that we have to do in ourselves around our own attachment that we're overreacting with fear. And then we need to work on our own trauma or whatever it is to make sure that we're not responding to safe situations with our internal danger cues. But just to be able to be aware in ourselves, in our bodies of what safety feels like, that's so valuable. Okay, I don't know if I'll use that, but at least it's there.
No, that's very good, and I think that's important because as you were describing all of that, I'm thinking of, how I feel with my current partner, but I'm also contrasting that to some of the dates that I went on that I could just feel some of them were good person, not compatible, just not feeling the chemistry, and other people it was just, for example, I went on a date with someone and they mentioned to me there's something they opened up and were very trusting. It was close to New Year's Eve, the date, and I mentioned how my father has been sober for many years, and so when I'm around my dad, like I avoid alcohol and just don't really serve alcohol or anything. And so after I shared that, after that first date, he said, I need to tell you something given your history. And that was that he's also in recovery, that he'd been in recovery for a couple of years from alcoholism. And he said, so, I understand that's something you need to think about, which I thought was very nice of him to do. And as I did think about that, I realized this would never be a problem right now. But knowing me, my history, where I've come from, I simply would never be able to be at peace and at rest with this person anytime there was alcohol around. Or I would also feel like I could never have alcohol for the rest of my life. And while I drink it very infrequently, I also didn't want to have that tension. And so I knew that I had to let this person go. And not for both of us. Not that and I said to him, everybody deserves a second chance, but your second chance wouldn't be with me because I would never be able to trust you, and that's not fair to you. You deserve somebody who will trust you because I know maybe he would never drink again. I knew that I simply could not be the person to walk through that with him because of what I'd been through. So that was a choice to, give him his freedom and find the person that could be right for him because I knew that it wasn't me. And I really appreciated that he was willing to be honest with me.
Yeah. And yeah, it was wonderful that he was honest with you. Your reply was honest. And what a nice way to let someone go into a relationship that will be, mutually rewarding for them rather than ghosting somebody, right? So, because that's often when people go on dates and they aren't sure how to let someone down or to let them know, like, hey, this isn't the right relationship for me. And then they just disappear. This is like a lovely alternative to that of saying like you deserve someone who will be able to let you, be alcohol free and that will be okay for both of you. It's very,
Right.
yeah, very beautiful also to be able to recognize for yourself that nuance, knowing in yourself of what's going to be right for you in a relationship and honoring that. That's the important part. You're able to honor that and move forward and now find the relationship that you're in, even though it took a little
Yes.
while. Good things are
Yeah.
worth the wait.
And that's part of that. You have to realize what you say no to and what you say yes to. And keeping
Yeah.
in mind that when you say yes to one thing, you might be saying no to something else. So, and that's okay, but are you choosing the ones that are going to be good for you in the long run? Are you making those healthy choices? And
Yeah.
so that saying no at that time again allowed me to come to the place where I am now and having said yes in my current relationship, and I get to enjoy what I enjoy now. And I feel so thankful, such a huge blessing in my life. And it is entirely possible to be in a secure, happy, thriving, and dynamic relationship that would not bore you. So we can
Yes.
definitely dismiss that as a
Yes.
concern, but it's the most beautiful thing that I've ever experienced. Honestly, Kaylee, it really is.
Yes, it is. And I want our listeners to know that that is possible. We're both living proof of it. We're in relationships that we love, that are exciting and secure. And this is possible for you too.